Welcome friends to another r/malicious compliance video. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Our first story of the day is by Aesop Iris. Sure, we can reschedule that class. So this is a fun bit of malicious compliance that shows why I love my new job. After being on the receiving end of more accidents than I liked, I switched careers to working as a driver's ed teacher. I'm fairly easygoing, but there's one aspect of any job I have that is a bottom line. My time is my time. If I'm off the clock for any reason, then I don't work. So if your class is scheduled for 5:45 and you show up at 5:30 when I start my break, I'm not going to do anything. Most parents understand that after the heck of kids that don't understand not stopping on train tracks, that you go counterclockwise through roundabouts. Seriously, he jumped the curb to turn the wrong direction through it, and one panic-inducing moment where a student nearly went the wrong way down a highway. Rural area, so no on or off ramps, just a road that crosses it. I need my breaks to de-stress. If they show up early and I say I'm on break, they nod and wait. Most of the time. Very seldom we get people that feel they have a right to demand I start a class early. This is one of those. First, it should be noted I don't have a uniform or badge, so aside from rooftopper on the training car, nothing says I work for the driving school. I had just settled down in my own car and was about to bite into my sub. Two of my past students work at Subway and discount my meals when a woman knocks on my window. I open my door and step out, food still in hand. The following occurs. Karen says, "Are you OP? We wanted to start his class early." I say, "I'm sorry, I'm on lunch right now. His lesson starts in 30 minutes. Karen says, "Well, we need to start earlier. He needs to be home early for dinner so he can't be out that late." I say, "I'm sorry, but when you scheduled the class, the schedule was fixed so that I could have the necessary break and lunch times." The Karen says, "Well, then reschedule this class and have your stupid lunch later." I say, "Miss, it's my lunch break. I'm not being paid for this time, and I need to be on the clock and scheduled to teach under state law." Not really, but sometimes saying it's a legal requirement slows the entitlement train. The Karen says, "I don't care. Teach him now." Oh, wow, that's a bright light bulb over my head. Let's play with this. I say, "Okay, I can reschedule today's class. Just let me call the office and get that arranged for you." I grab my phone and dial the admin I deal with most of the time. Kat is great. She'll let me know when parents or students cancel. She clears my schedule when I need to take the car in for maintenance. And she doesn't like her teachers being bossed around by customers. After all, they need us more than we need them. Just to make it easier, I put the phone on speaker. I said, "Hey Kat, Joe's mom Karen's here and wants to reschedule his lesson today." Kat says, "When does she want to move it to?" Karen says, "I want him to start right now." I say, "So yeah, I was thinking just cancel the 4:30 to 6:30 class and give me another at 4:10. Karen says, "Why the freak is this taking so long?" Kat says, "You sure you want to do this, ma'am?" Karen says, "Yes, you idiot." "Please stop shouting. My phone's on speaker. She can hear you perfectly fine." Kat says, "Okay, I've canceled the original class and rescheduled it to start in 2 minutes. We'll note this in your records. Please remember there's a $50 fee for canceling within 24 hours. Have a good day." And she hung up. While I tried not to grin as Karen realized she'd just been charged double the cost of a lesson to have it start 20 minutes early. And if she doesn't pay, then we can withhold the certificate her son needs to take his driver's test. For his part, the kid is actually pretty good. One of those students where we're mainly just going through the motions of driver's ed to appease the almighty BMV/DMV, and he's glad he gets to spend a couple hours every few days driving without having to listen to his mother nagging him. So do you think what OP and Kat did here was a little unfair? Yes, Karen was rude, aggressive, and belligerent, but it doesn't seem like they made enough of an effort to clarify that there's a $50 charge. So for them to say, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" get an angry yes, and then at the very end go, "Okay, by the way, it's $50, bye," seems a bit much. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments down below. This next story is by r/Callous Heart. Don't tell me how to do my job. Okay then. Recently, I was reminded of this story from a couple of years ago. As mentioned in a previous story on a different sub, I worked for a company that gets hired to do the grunt work at large concerts. Basically, we set the gig up in the morning, then tear it back down at night. Two things you need to know first that are relevant to this story. Firstly, this is a job that has the potential to be inherently dangerous. You're working with very heavy equipment and sometimes at a decent height off the ground. So there's always the possibility that you'll either fall off of something and do some damage, or something will fall on you and do some damage. To give you an example, one load-in, we were working, one of the trucks was packed from top to bottom, side to side, and front to back with flight cases. This is dangerous, since it gives people unloading the truck no breathing space to unload. While trying to get the first case off the truck, one of my coworkers lost his balance and fell off the ramp. Luckily, I was standing in the perfect place to catch him and cushion his fall. If I hadn't been there, he'd have fallen just over 5 feet and landed flat on his back on solid concrete, which could have done some serious damage to his back. So, as you can imagine, health and safety is quite a big deal to our boss. We're required to wear a hard hat and steel toe-capped boots when we're working, and when we first apply for the job, we're given a sizable document on health and safety to read, and we go through a health and safety briefing before we start our first shift. Secondly, we start every shift by unloading trucks. Depending on the size of the show we're working, we have anywhere from 5 to 30 trucks to unload. Generally, we'll start unloading the trucks, and bit by bit, some of us will be called to start assembling some freshly unloaded staging or rigging. This story involves a gentleman we'll call Kevin. Kevin's an older guy, maybe in his early 60s, and started working for the company at the same time I did, although he worked similar jobs when he was my age, in the late 70s and early 60s. Kevin's a perfectly affable guy, and it's always entertaining hearing about his experiences from working back in the day. However, Kevin's a little bit lax when it comes to health and safety. He's compliant to most of our guidelines, but some things he's a little bit less compliant with. The one thing he does that annoys everyone is sending down flight cases without checking that someone's on the ramp to take the case from him. A little bit of flight case etiquette: if you send a smallish flight case down a ramp, one that one person can wheel along the floor to its destination, you make sure there's one person on the ramp to grab the case and make sure it doesn't speed down the ramp and go flying into the middle of the arena floor, and at least one person on each side to guide the case down the ramp. These cases might be light enough that one person can wheel one across the floor solo, but they're heavy enough that it's gonna hurt if a runaway one hits your leg. Kevin doesn't do this with the smaller cases, and this annoys everyone. We've told him several times, but it goes in one ear and out the other. One particular show, we had 10 trucks to unload, and by the time we were on truck number 9, everyone else, bar myself, Kevin, and a few others, had been allocated a job setting up part of the show. The last truck was late. It had broken down en route to the venue. After we were finished with truck number 9, we were allowed to take a smoke break while we waited for the last truck to arrive. We confronted Kevin outside, and he told us, "Stop telling me how to do my job. I know what I'm doing." So we all nodded and went to smoke our cigarettes. The final truck arrived not long after, and we went to go and gut it. We opened the trailer doors, put the ramp in place, and Kevin and another coworker got on the truck and started unloading the cases. Our boss, John, walked over to our truck, and one of us said, "Hey John, would you mind helping us unload? We're a man down." John obliged and walked up to the ramp to get the first case. Just as he stepped foot on the ramp, Kevin launched his first missile. John caught the case, then told Kevin to go with him for a chat. I jumped on the truck and took Kevin's place. We gutted the truck in about 20 minutes, then we were delegated to setting up the drum risers for the stage that we just unloaded. Kevin came back to join us, and we heard later that John had given Kevin a warning, and if he was ever caught breaking health and safety rules again, he'd be fired. I definitely think OP and their coworkers handled this as best as they could. They tried to handle it honestly by going straight up to Kevin and saying, "Hey, this isn't safe, nobody appreciates it, everybody would really appreciate it if this could be worked on." When they disrespect those wishes and keep on doing harmful stuff, that's when you frankly just have to escalate it and make sure people who can do something about it are aware of what's going on, so that hopefully, like it did, everything can get corrected. Our next story is by Happy Scattered Reader. Don't send emails outside of work? Sure. Backstory: some of our field agents in my company were taken off the road on full pay during COVID, but expected to be available for retraining, etc., in anticipation of a return to work. At the beginning of last month, I started scheduling training for agents to return to the field. Pre-COVID, these agents worked an 11 to 7 shift, and I usually worked business hours. There were times I'd be around from 7 a.m. or doing something at 9 in the evening though, and generally would respond to an email if I felt it warranted one at that time. During COVID and retraining, agents were asked to be available during business hours instead for these trainings and not their usual shift. Everyone seemed happy enough to do this upon request. One agent who can be a serial complainer at the best of times started whining that he was getting emails outside of his work times, i.e. 9 or 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. Now, I usually send invites to training, etc. or handouts whenever I get a free second, which could be 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. depending on if I'm tied up in training sessions or meetings. No agent is obligated to check and/or respond to anything outside of their work hours, however. It's more so it's in their inbox when they log on. A Teams invite went out at about 9 a.m. for a training exercise 2 days later, as I wanted to keep scheduling ahead of myself and give the guys as much notice as I could. Serial complainer went to HR and said he has a right to disconnect. HR explained that he was under no obligation to read or reply to any of these emails, as his shift was 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Remember, the shift is actually 11 a.m., but all agents were happy to work to a different schedule during training and finish at 5 p.m. instead. HR requested that this agent not receive emails outside of their contracted hours due to their complaint and right to disconnect. I said sure, no problem. Cue malicious compliance. I sent an email out at 9 p.m. 2 days later with some new information about some of the products that were due to be added the next day. This had only come via the client about an hour before. Agents were all now back to the 11 a.m. shift, and I wanted to have the information as soon as possible, as I had AL booked for the next day. I had left serial complainer out as per his request and had scheduled his email to send at 11 a.m. Serial complainer then sent an email to me after receiving the email, whining that he hadn't been given adequate notice of the new information. My out of office was on as I was AL. Serial complainer then called my work mobile and left a voicemail asking me to run through the product set with him. I didn't have my work phone on as, AL. I was then sent another email from him where he stated that he was not informed of the products the same time as his colleagues and was being put at a disadvantage and being discriminated against, and complained that I was unavailable to explain what he needed to know, which was unacceptable. I saw this email the next day after I returned from AL, and I replied at 11 a.m. stating that I'm not obliged to respond to emails outside my work hours under the right to disconnect, and CC'd HR. I then emailed HR separately and brought up that serial complainer was suffering from a case of the old double standards. Everyone but serial complainer receives emails outside of work hours now, and every time serial complainer sends one outside of someone else's work hours, they don't respond until their shifts start. We all have, I may send this email at a time that is of convenience to me. Please note, you are not obliged to respond outside of work hours. Serial complainer is not happy, but rules is rules. I was kind of confused as to what AL is. Apparently it means annual leave, so I apologize after the fact and not actually reading it out. It just wasn't explained. That said, I don't know if there's anything more annoying than somebody with such clear-cut double standards. I hate it when you do this. Okay, well I'll stop doing that for just you and keep on doing it for everyone else. Then you wait one day and you get, hey, why does everybody else get this and I don't? It's like, you literally asked for this. But with that being said, that's a wrap on another bunch of stories here today. As always, if you guys have any favorite videos of this bunch, let me know which one in the comments down below and why. And if you enjoyed the stories in general, if you could subscribe to this channel, it'd mean a lot to me. I make these videos daily, and it's by far and away the best way to support my channel. So no matter what you did, whether it was subscribing or liking, leaving a comment, I just appreciate the heck out of you guys. And as always, I'll be back tomorrow with even more stories right here on the Storytime channel.